research last year saying that 90% of AI pilots that don't go anywhere, and there's good reasons for that. But let's go through these common patterns really about why pilots do stall, and then we can talk about what production actually means.
Generally speaking, if a business is looking to deploy AI and they treat it like an IT project, it isn't going to work basically. And the biggest problem that we've always found is that each department has their own priorities about what optimizes their departments, which creates local optimization, but overall maximum gets completely obliterated and ignored. Everybody's time is valuable. You don't really have time to mess around. What you need to actually do is have focused attention.
Welcome to the Implement AI podcast, the podcast where we explore the impact of AI on your business. I'm Piers, Linney, alongside my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Aalok Shukla. We cover the real-world applications and impact of how AI can be practically applied to drive growth and efficiency in your organization. We cut through the jargon to focus on actionable strategies and use cases to highlight the transformational power of AI. Let's dive into today's conversation. I'm Piers.
I'm Aalok.
I don't know where you are, Aalok, but it's still raining.
Sunny. I'm in Lisbon right now. I'll be in London.
It's still raining there.
No. We haven't been 3 days. I'm making most of it. I'm in London from next week.
Bring a coat. Yeah. I'm at my mum's, which is in the Pennines, which is like, if you don't want to avoid rain, probably the worst place to come to. Right, so we've done this is our third in 3 episodes, and we've been kind of going through our AI workforce playbook, which Aalok's holding up if you're on YouTube, which is quite a long document. It's not one you kind of read like a book, cover to cover. It's one where you dip into the sections that are relevant for you. Some are based on job title, even like CEO or CTO, for example. So we've done, the first one was really about, what is this second workforce? What are digital workers? We explained that. And then the second one, which was in our nice, shiny in-person studio, which is a whole different production quality for our podcast, and it seems the look of it at least, was on digital workers. So the ins and outs of what they are, what they can do, what they're capable of, configuring them, how our platform works, which is all great. But the third one is probably the most important one, actually. And it's really about how do you move from talking about it and pilots. We do lots of pilots. We started this business for 2.5 years just doing pilots, to production. And at the end, actually, we're going to tag on something else, which we've been talking about more recently, because this is always evolving, which is, Aalok, you can lead that bit, which is about insights versus action agents. So analysis versus action. So looking, as I say,
they're actually linked. Those two sections are linked.
They are, totally, yeah. So we'll come on to that as well. So if you don't know the podcast, just quick say hello. So it's Implement AI Podcast. We supply digital workers to businesses of all sizes, SMEs up to a FTSE 100. And we built our platform, AOS, allows you to deploy them, manage them, they collaborate. And that means, and I get in conversations sometimes on social media and LinkedIn about, there's all these like technical platforms. We're like, no, we don't supply technology. We supply workers that do stuff, right? That's what we do. That's the big difference. And if you enjoy the podcast, many people do. We had about 300,000 downloads for one, where we had the UK AI minister on our podcast. So we do often have guests, and we're having more guests starting from the next one. Enjoy the podcast. Please leave a review. Go onto our website, implementai.io, and go to our resources center. You can download all the documents you need. And we do a webinar every Thursday if you want to learn more. There's lots going on. Follow us on LinkedIn, social media. I just posted an interesting article as well about this insights versus action agents yesterday, which will be about a week ago by the time you hear this. Right, so let's get into it. So the core message here really is, production AI infrastructure is what this is all about. It's about having agents doing work, not experimentation and talk endlessly. And I keep saying, if you're a senior leader, an owner, you're on a board, you're not having conversations about how you start really deploying agents into your business this year, right? I don't think you're doing your job. And I don't mean replacing your workforce. It's really now about augmentation. It's about helping them do things in ways they couldn't do. AI does things that at times where people can't, out of hours, for example, and at scale, huge data sets. So let's talk about pilots, right? Research last year saying that 90% of AI pilots that don't go anywhere, and there's good reasons for that. I think it's our podcast number 56 or 57 or 60, 67. We talk about that in great detail. Why? Well, let's go through sort of these sort of common patterns really about why pilots do stall, and then we can talk about what production actually means.
Sure. So if we just talk about like why most pilots would fail. So generally speaking, if a business is looking to deploy AI and let's say, for example, the internal team have their own ideas about what's going to work in their department, they're trying to like think about particular tools, they don't necessarily have a good business critical use case, they've got no measurable ROI, they just want to do that thing and they treat it like an IT project, it isn't going to work basically. And the biggest problem that we've always found is that like each department has their own priorities about what optimizes their departments, which creates local optimization. But you know, the overall maximum gets completely obliterated and ignored. And the point there is that people then also start going into experimentation with particular tools or particular things they've got to try and kind of work on different things. This is all kind of nice to do in some perspective, but it's actually quite a waste of time because given the fact that like everybody's salary is there, everybody's time is valuable, you've got your quarterly targets, you've got everything that needs to be done. You don't really have time to like mess around. What you need to actually do is have focused attention. So if you think about what can be a good pilot, basically, it would be actually doing an investigation to see where you could actually drive, you know, revenue, capacity or experience or, you know, insights either within some of those different areas or even some actions within there are, you know, those places. And the key thing that you've got to do is like have a clear vision of what success looks like and go from there. So let me give a few examples.
But before we do that though, so the things are, we come across a lot on there, which maybe you'll talk about, which is one is tech or tool first, right? It's not what work needs doing, what's going to move this business forward. Yeah. Another one we see quite often, which maybe we touch upon, is we think this will be really cool to automate. And we're like, okay, great, and we automate it. It actually is really cool, but there's no ROI, or it's not something that it's ongoing.
It's a week. It's like
Yeah.
there's a minimal impact from it, or it's not going to actually change anything. Or you have someone that like hacked together some solution. Great, it works on one solution, but it doesn't have additional business logic. It has no guardrails. It has no integration into systems that need to be done. It can't be cross-transferred into different departments. See, the thing is, if you start creating your own software, you're going to have to maintain your own software. Then you're going to have all the kind of guardrails, dependencies, security, integrations, upgrades. You know, if you build in a particular way, you've not built in the modular way. When the technology changes, you can't change those things. So I think the use of like trying to build internal software, I mean, we're talking with some companies where they've got their own software and development team, and they've realized that's fine for certain things, but it's not going to be cut the goose, you know, it going moving forward in this kind of way, basically. And also the cost of those salaries to actually build internal tools, it's not cost effective at all, basically, right? You know, so I think the key thing there is that having that mindset about like, what are we actually trying to do? Like, what's the key metric we're trying to make go up, or what's the key unlock we're trying to do? And very few organizations think that way first. And the second thing, like you said, it's not an IT project. It's not like just one thing that's going to happen. Like we've spoken with some organization, they said, oh yes, it's part of our wider technology and innovation thing, while they're kind of hemorrhaging, you know, conversations or, you know, inquiries in a particular area. This is operational, not technological.
Or they'll say, often companies will say, oh, we'll get our tech consultant in, which we use for tech projects. You're like, no, this is forever. You are never going to stop implementing AI.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the kind of key thing that you're looking at in that kind of way. So step one should be finding out some of those different areas. Now, for example, there are very good reasons to do pilots. Let's just say, for example, you identify a good work stream, you understand what you're trying to do, but you want to say basically prove that this system, this opportunity can work without having to do deeper integration. So in that situation, absolutely, we could work with like a data set of like, you know, call recordings or, you know, emails or different elements, or even like a downloaded customer list or whatever like this. And then you can run pilots on those where you can actually see how does the cohort behave, what insights did we get from it, where it is there. And then you can quantify your metrics that, for example, you know, an insurance company, 35% of calls had a missed revenue opportunity within there. Or you're looking at like, you know, some clinics, you know, based on the calls, you know, there's like $500 worth of revenue there, or based on something else, it could be like, you know, 25% of customer churn signals are coming from this different area. All those things can be, or, you know, your team members are spending too much time in this versus that. It doesn't matter what you're looking at. There's all sorts of insights that can be gained. And then from that, you can then move to production. If you want to touch anything on the pilot part of it now.
Yeah, I think with pilots though, it really is, again, we often when we do our talks, we talk about this I use a 2x2 matrix all the time, right? So yeah, you can do things, and this is in the document. You can do things which are interesting, the potentially huge ROI, but the technology is not quite there yet. Or you can focus on, which we tend to focus on, which is where the technology is very good and it works, and there's a measurable, meaningful ROI. So it's kind of start there, because you're far more likely then to be able to show value and take all your stakeholders that kind of look at AI thinking, where's this going, to show them it works, show them to prove value and take them on that journey. What you don't get often is something where it's amazing, but you just do it once, or you have to wait, 6 months for tech to catch up. Tech always will catch up. But the point there, I think, overall is move from pilots to production. Very different than having AI in production.
Exactly. And this is the key thing. You actually gain so much more benefit by having it in production, because you could do it in a phased way, which I'll talk about in the third part, is insights versus action, basically. But the key thing here is you have connection to live data streams. So you can actually then have ongoing value. See, the difference between using GPT or Claude or whatever like that, it's a calculator. If you use it, it does something. But if you don't use it, or you forget to use it, it doesn't do something, basically, right? The point about having it in production is it's always doing something. So every single day, for example, ourselves, we have an agent, which computer use agent will go through our whole dashboard for our Grafana and everything like this, and spot where the issues, where the different elements, what if things came up, and it will put the details into a Slack channel with a full report. Basically, that's in production. So that means every single day we can see over the last 24 to 40 hours what happened, what didn't happen, and that's a monitoring situation, basically, right? So I don't have to remember to do that; it'll happen by itself. So that's the key thing. That's one example. The other thing could be every time an inquiry comes in, it's handled. Another one could be, out of hours things are handled. Another one could be, every time an invoice became overdue, it goes down through the process. The point is, by having it in production, it will be in the core systems. It can be basically in that whole PCU metrics. So we talked about in the very first and second episode, where you can actually have like that. You're buying output. You're basically buying that, okay, now my department's going to output all this kind of stuff. And you've got that, clear success metrics, and you've got the different elements within there. So the point there is that like you've actually got extra capacity in that department now, and it's working on an ongoing basis, if that makes sense.
And you're also learning like your PCU versus kind of FTE. But you're also learning, I'm going to write an article on AI time is very different to human time as well. But when you do have a human in the loop, you can revert back to human time, which you have to. But what you're going to learn is in your organization, your business, your workflow, especially your regulated as well, where is that line? Where do you want humans in the loop? Where do you want that call escalated to humans? And that's what you're only going to learn. That you can do that from pilots, but you only really learn this at scale, where you have a sort of ongoing interaction with customers, prospects, stakeholders, employees at scale in real time.
Exactly, because like there's so many insights that can be done. Like, for example, our computer use agent has been upgraded twice recently, and it's like way faster before. What we've been doing with some businesses is like actually running audits on like their whole external view, like their Trustpilot, their usability, their claims, their different stuff like this. And then in other ones, it's actually been going through the actual SaaS software. So we got it with some customers where it will then pull up the last 7 days of like schedule, what's happened, what jobs have been done, which engineers were working, what.
A lot of companies, people answering the phone, SaaS software, until this technology was available, they were getting away with murder because it's not doing what it's supposed to do, or they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And now you can check that and not only check it, you can report on it at scale.
Yeah, it's so powerful because, like I said, like it literally goes through all the pages, pulls all the information that can then be assembled into a report, and you actually know exactly what's kind of going on. You can also interrogate other systems. So, like over the weekend, I was doing analysis of like all the different team members, kind of analyze their kind of team's communication, their board activities, Slack communication, all that kind of stuff, and then like you can organize it based on like what is solution orientated, what is signal, what is noise, which is maybe like not to go to the point where we need to kind of go to, and how everything can be optimized. I do it on myself, actually. I pull up like this week, this morning I was going to breakfast, I pulled up my last week of Fireflies meetings, Slack, Teams, email sent, and I scored myself basically like, based on the objectives, which I'm trying to do, these are all different elements, what things are happening, what things are missing, what's still pending. The ability to actually be able to like have these as an ongoing source of intelligence is so important, because the key thing that you've got now is like, you've got capacity in your departments, you've got your team members, but now you can add a whole different level of intelligence into all their activities. I mean, when you think about it before, right? The highest paid people in your team are the most educated. The most educated means that they've been pre-trained. Their brain has been pre-trained in how many, universities, colleges, books, life, whatever you want to call it. So they've got a valuable model basically, right? But no matter how valuable their model is, it was only being applied to certain types of work. It was never being given to certain types of data set, like all your missed sales inquiries, or why these engineering tickets a certain way, or what insights could be gained in that way. I'll talk about in that third part. Now, obviously, by bringing in these kind of levels of intelligence into different departments, you can increase the intelligence in each department and then help shine a light on where all those opportunities are within there. So absolutely need to have it in production.
I
And
think also, Alan, there's something I will come back to, isn't it? Is that, your human resource, your colleagues, yourself, you touch technology, computers, laptops, phones, and as you touch it, that becomes measurable. This is not just about AI agents. A lot of the things that Alok's just been talking about there, the things we're analyzing actually is what humans are doing. Because you can do now at scale in great detail. Even if you're doing one-on-ones with your senior team, you can analyze every email, every meeting, every interaction with customer they had that week. But so what you're now doing is saying, okay, well, currently the business and the human resource is doing this. How can AI improve upon that? You're not guessing anymore when you go into production. You've measured it.
I think this is a nice segue into the third part, basically, isn't it? Right?
Yes, let's talk about. So again, we're going to update our AI playbook already. So we did a lot of work more recently with customers where, and the honest reason is because they're very interested in AI and going into production, but they're not always, especially bigger companies, not always quite sure about agents interacting with customers, prospects, employees, all stakeholders.
All the other process inflects.
Yeah, we have a process, action agents. So what we're deploying actually are analyst or insights agents. And to talk us through, Aalok, who are actually analyzing data and showing you where the opportunities are for the action agents.
So since 2023, when we started, we've been deploying analyst agents. I think one of the first phone call analyst, which was like detecting missed opportunities from within different areas. And if anyone's ever seen us speak, there's a slide I often use where there's a dark room and you can't see anybody. And then I turn another slide and you suddenly see number of people in the room, but it's through thermal imaging. I call it predator night vision. Basically, you can see how many people in the room, what the temperature. And the point here is like, if you can see what other people cannot see, you have an advantage. So this is actually where we actually see the biggest.
You've got an advantage if you then react to it.
Yes, act on it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But step one, this is an article I posted a couple of days ago. First, you need to see what you've never seen before. Then you can do what you've never done before, basically, right? So the point here is that like most businesses know they should be using AI. They've heard of like different, things like voice agents, chatbots, tools. They play around with it. But the key thing that they don't understand is like you get the most opportunity and the most elements from actually going deep into it. And I saw this very interestingly. I'll give you a story. I was analyzing the tickets from one business. So basically, they gave me the order data from like them 3 months of orders from, it's a B2B business, and then 3 months of support tickets from those businesses. Now, their ticketing software has like, is it happy? Is it resolved? How long to resolve it? And all that stuff. It's got like the micro measurement. It's like twig level measurement, basically, right? But it doesn't have the forest. So when we actually analyzed it through an analyst agent, we could actually see that like actually the ones which had the late deliveries were the ones that were sometimes placing the least orders, but they also had the least digital technology in that business, which meant that they could only do things by post versus doing it digitally. So it's just, when you start to surface these things, you can actually segment your customers into like, actually, I could sell these people a digital tool and it would increase their service. So not only do I reduce my support tickets, but I would actually unlock revenue. Also, I could offer a better service. I can quantifiably communicate with that business about the different elements. So it's a whole different level of insight you can give where it's very specific, where you could actually segment customers into ascension categories and act on it. And the point is, before you have 3 spreadsheets and you'd have, 3,000 tickets. Nobody can go through that, right? You understand, right? But the point of like bringing those together and being able to pull that in there, this gives you the hidden cost of what
I
you
think also just on that, because the detail is that a lot of the kind of SaaS you use, they're kind of adding AI, but it's because they have to. Now, people say to us all the time, well, people can build this stuff. You're like, well, not really, because we do this. This is all we do, right? I mean, your example there, the computer use agent, right? We've upgraded it. This is the second time. By the time you build most AI solutions, they're out of date. They're out of date, aren't they? So the point here is that we're built these solutions, these agents. They're able to do these things. They can do them continually, and you can then build them into workflows, which mean other agents can then start to take action. But we'll come on to action a bit later. But to keep going through examples, I think they're fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. So That's one example there where you could actually see that like there are those insights within there of like how you can actually like leverage your team better. Because the other thing you ought to remember is your team is having meetings with its team every single day. What you've got the opportunity now is to bring a crisper insight to them so they can actually explain to other people. So right now, the point is that your business is generating thousands of data points every single day. Every phone call, support ticket, Slack message, CRM update, team meeting has signals that you about what's working, what's not working. Even like last 24 hours, there'll be firefighters meetings if you're recording it or whatever, where a customer said something they were frustrated about. Are you reviewing that on a 24-hour basis or a week basis for the signals? No, you're not, basically. And if you're looking at a tool, which is, let's just say, I don't know, a Zendesk or whatever like that, it'll have micro-level insights, but it will not have multi-system insights. It could not pull the information from that and compare it to your order system in a different way. There's no way you can do that.
What you often get is what you often get is pushback, or people say, "Oh, will I get pushback from people?" We get this all the time, don't we? Saying, "Well, do you want AIs listening to all my meetings and reading all my emails and listening to all my..." Well,
But
get
do you
used
want
to it. No,
to
but
miss
I'm
off?
saying just get used to it, because that's where the world's going.
I mean, there's two steps here, right? Because like right now, if you're missing opportunities and losing things, your team is not getting promotions, not getting bonuses, not getting anything like that, and you're becoming increasingly uncompetitive, basically. So you don't really have a choice in the matter, basically. If you want to improve, that's the way you have to go, basically. And so the point here is that like you have opportunities that are like slipping through everywhere, and typically most businesses will be missing like revenue signals, inquiries that weren't followed up, people that got stuck on a particular point, capacity drains, the same 15 questions asked 10,000 times, and experience gaps. Like, and Alex was talking about that with one CIO. And basically what happens is like when they acquire organizations, the first thing they do is this kind of insights deep dive. Now, these are massive companies. They've got different resources, and also the cost and time for them to do it. When Alex was explaining what we can do, he was quite intrigued. But the point here is that like you can actually then do a complete inside analysis of like, all the communications, all the different elements, and you can start to understand what are you not seeing in this business, basically, right? And the key thing I see is that when you connect these AI-powered analyst agents where they can either analyze specific things or they can dynamically query in different ways, you start to surface insights that have always been there, but no one had the bandwidth to find. And typically we see 6 streams through 3 lenses, basically, right? So you see calls, emails, tickets, meetings, messages, CRM and systems, plus external like reviews and stuff like that, and the website. So calls is like quality, compliance, missed opportunities, coaching gaps. Emails can be response times and answered inquiries, sentiment, cross-sell opportunities. Tickets can be repeat issues, SLA breaches, customer pain patterns, resolution concerns, and like, reputational issues. Meetings can be decision velocity, action, follow through, alignment, gaps, strategy execution. Messaging can be, information silos, repeated questions, departmental friction, internal bottlenecks. And CRM systems can be pipeline health, stale deals, scheduling gaps, overuse, different stuff like this. And the key thing there is like, there's what you can see, but there's also what we call the shadow notes, what is not being said and what you can infer from it. So for example, with one organization, they saw that it was like a medical device manufacturer, and they saw that like the clinicians that basically were missing basic information on the order ticket, right? They typically had the biggest problems later due to complications in what they were doing. I mean, you can think about it, right? Someone who's not conscientious on filling out the basic details, are they going to be conscientious on other stuff afterwards, basically, right? So you can actually start to draw insights and training opportunities that we could sell them a training course or provide a training opportunity and stuff like this. So the shadow notes dimension about what you couldn't even see or what you couldn't even think about, I think is incredibly powerful.
But go through some examples where, it's a regulated sector, right? And some of the stuff you're finding is actually quite serious.
Yeah. So for example, like in certain situations that the wrong elements was quoted about, like for a regulated medicine, for example, like, that's one example that they were given the wrong information about what their BMI should be. Another example could be like in insurance, where some information was not provided, which you actually have to provide as a disclaimer. That was not said, for example. Or other examples can be where there was like, someone mentioned one type of insurance, but they weren't mentioned a different one, which would be complementary, which could have been added on. So there's all sorts of examples we see every single day. Or another example that you wouldn't get from a report. We had an agent go through somebody's scheduling software for their job management, and it spotted different people, how many places they had to travel to, an approximate distance between them. And then they could see who was like more traveling and potentially lost time versus who was not. That doesn't necessarily surface in a report very easily, essentially, right? So there's all sorts of insights you kind of gain there. But the key thing is revenue, capacity, and experience. So where are you leaving money on the table? So that can help surface the commercial signals, hiding your everyday interactions, inquiries that weren't followed up, even your team conversations. Who mentioned something? Where is it stuck? Has there been anything movement? Like, for example, in the last 48 hours, on the Slack channels for your customers or the Teams channels, has there been any movement? If there hasn't been a movement, that's a signal too. The lack of the movement, basically, right? The other thing in terms of like, capacity, where's your people's time being wasted? Can you spot that like certain things have not been escalated? The same questions being asked 10,000 times a year. There's a delay between the invoice and being approved and actually being sent. That could be 10 days of cash flow, basically, right? If that's happening across your whole business, all these sorts of things. And experience, where customers are staffing with poor experience, you could actually correlate, for example, what you talk about internally with the customer, your emails with them, then the Trustpilot reviews and your website claims. And it could then show you, actually, you need to change your website claims so you can shift the expectation and change the emails to do these things. Nobody has the ability to have that joined up view, but with these agents and this analysis kind of like stream, you can totally do that, basically. So the point here is supercharging your team, not replacing them, essentially, isn't it?
It's also now realizing that you can do this. So unless you know you can do it, you don't really think about it. So a lot of organizations, when we show them this, they're pretty gobsmacked. And I'm telling you now, it's very rare that we've done this kind of analysis where, they're kind of happy with the results.
If you go into the calls, emails, tickets, meetings, messaging, CRM systems, and details, there is always opportunities. And what I love is like, like when you're driving in the dark, okay? Imagine like, so when I drive to France, for example, like there's this windy tunnel through like the, north of Spain going to France, and it's generally misty and you can't see very far ahead. So you put your headlights on, right? And then you can see further ahead. So you've got confidence over the distance you're trying to travel. The way I look at it is if you turn on these, the insights into your calls, emails, tickets, meetings, message tools, your systems, you can now see way further. Everybody else is driving in the dark. They can only see 50 meters ahead. You can now see a much greater distance ahead, and you can spot the issues that are going to come and hit you. So you can actually take different routes. So your ability to navigate the future and navigate the present and be more profitable this week are dramatically increased. Because like
But
action,
the point I'm
action,
making there is that be prepared for those headlights in the dark to shine a light on some uncomfortable truths. But what you're going to realize is that, right, okay, so that's why we're not converting as many, or we're losing these customers, or churn so high, because you wouldn't have known before.
exactly. And so this is like the beauty, because yes, you can reactivate customers so we've got insight agents and action agents, basically. So insight agents is what we're talking about in terms of analyst agents and also like dynamic analysis of like different data streams. Then you got action agents, which are basically interactive agents to talk to customers and, in different ways, or action agents to actually update CRMs, use systems and also operate a computer. We say insights come quicker because you could actually act on the insights that day, that week in your meetings, because all businesses are having regular meetings. The difference is, are you talking about the things that really matter? That's the question, right? You've got a meeting already. Are you actually talking about the things that can drive things forward that week?
It might not immediately be about action agents. It might be about fixing what your human resources are doing.
That's the step one. Augment and power your existing team. Step one. Then step two, bring in action agents to augment and increase the capacity. But step one is get your team performing at a higher level. I've seen it myself, right? When I've shared it with some people, like even within our own team, I see their response. They're like, you can actually see everything, basically, isn't it? Right? But then you can have an honest conversation about what support they need. And I even put together personalized coaching guides for each person based on the goals of different things. And it is helpful because I can see different results happening. So it's very powerful.
And I think also, last thing to say on this really, I think, is that the beauty of this as well is that you're introducing, going back, the title of this podcast, going from pilot to production, you're now going into production with AI that is actually, it might be uncomfortable in some cases, but it's demonstrating and creating immediate value. People start to see the power of it. And then you're going to ask yourself, okay, can I fix this with my human resources, or am I better off, which is often the case, revenue, capacity, experience, implementing and deploying action agents or different AI agents to go and augment the human resource to fix this or do something about it. Therefore, you're going to find the buy-in to deploying those agents is going to be a lot easier, a lot faster.
And you'll know exactly where to deploy them, because this is the key thing, and we kind of like sum up here essentially: revenue, capacity, experience, insights across all three, action across all three. That's your job. Simple as that. Start with insights, then that alone will unlock opportunities that you never saw, that your competition don't have access to. Then you can actually go even further and go from there.
Yeah, and that's going to cost you probably, annual basis, probably half of the average UK salary. So it's going to pay for itself many, many times over.
Absolutely. And also your board, your customers, your everybody is going to be able to see like how things go. If you're a C-level person, your department, your company is just going to be, be able to accelerate ahead.
So this is basically the last of 3 episodes. We're going to go back to our kind of usual cadence. We're going to have some guests on as well. We've got some quite interesting people on the pod actually. But again, we're about practical AI, our podcast. So if you've enjoyed it, please do leave reviews, especially Apple Podcasts. It really helps. Go and read the AI Workforce Playbook. We're going to update it, add some of this insights versus action agents as well. I think that really adds some value. And tune in next week. We're up to sort of top 20 often now in UK management, this podcast. I think it adds real value. And please, if you want to talk about AI adoption in your business, if you want some help extracting these insights, deploying agents to look at the kind of things we've talked about, get in touch and we can get those up and running, can't we? In like, a week or 2. I'm always more aggressive. Yeah. But as fast as you will enable us to, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Persist.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, on that note, we shall see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Implement AI podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how we can assist you and your business in leveraging AI for growth and efficiency, visit our website at implementai.io. Don't forget to subscribe to the Implement AI podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to stay updated on future episodes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.